quality of academic programming is directly related to the quality of the educational facility. I don't feel like I'm just running a facilities department. We're developing leaders for our entire nation.
Economics is tough, and we have to be aware of it. Every decision we kind of make, we kind of filter that. What are we going to be looking at next year? What's next year going to do for us?
The biggest things that we're going through, like other universities, is we're trying to do more with less.
APPA gives us the opportunity to share best practices. And sharing those best practices is how we can actually do more with less.
You're constantly looking at both new leadership techniques and new technologies. And APPA is really cutting edge on exposing its members to what's new, where the changes are.
APPA provides that catalyst for the sharing of knowledge in new technologies, in old strategies, to ensure that we're doing the right thing when it comes to how we operate our facilities related to energy and sustainability.
APPA is the ultimate for networking. I mean, networking is what the association really is about. There are so many individuals in our organization that get a chance to meet others.
There's no substitute for first-hand information. And APPA has provided the platform, a venue, of bringing people from these institutions to share their collective experience.
You want to know what everybody else is doing around the country. APPA is helping us get there.
You're going to be better at your institution financially because of your involvement with APPA also. It is an investment that will pay back 100-fold.
Well, welcome to APPA 2012 here in Denver, to our annual meeting and exposition. For those of you that were not at breakfast, I am Glenn Smith, the director or the vice president for professional development, and we're just thrilled that you're here because, you know, without you, we cannot have a successful conference. It's really all about the people that come. And I'm here to announce we have a greater turnout here at Denver than we have had in a long, long time. So give all yourselves a round of applause. And I hope you were at breakfast, and I hope you enjoyed Phil Van Hooser. Remember, 11 o'clock, stop by the registration booth, pick up your book. Let's give Phil another round of applause. I think he really did a great job. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video that opened this morning's session. We wanted to kick off our session with something that was both exciting and inspirational. The video you just watched will be used to help spread the message on the important value that APPA provides to both educational facilities, professionals, and to the institutions we serve. And incidentally, we have a complimentary copy of the video for you after today's session. So take it with you and put it to good use. Mary Vosevich, our next APPA president, said it best in the video. APPA is truly an investment that pays back 100-fold. It is our single greatest opportunity to network, share information, inspire, and ultimately transform our institutions. I want to mention just a quick word about the APPA 2012 Planning Committee. I know some of you are out there in the audience. And the Planning Committee was complemented by our Professional Development Committee. They work together to put this program together for you. They work hard throughout the year. They have lined up a fantastic week for us. What's more, they've taken very careful aim to ensure that the APPA 2012 offers sessions that are important and relevant to all of us. Our diverse member institutions, including both our 4-year and 2-year colleges and universities, as well as our K-12 member schools, museums, and libraries. I'd like to give a real round of applause to both the APPA 2012 Planning Committee and our Professional Development Committee. They've truly done a tremendous job. Now, each year, APPA's annual conference serves as our platform for dialogue and public debate on the challenges and critical issues. And together as leaders in education, we will use our time in Denver to build consensus and define our path forward. During the next 3 days, our general sessions will feature well-known educational facilities officers, university and community college administrators, industry experts, and more. We will hear their vision for education and facilities and how we can expertly address current and future trends and challenges. Now, before we begin today's plenary session, I'm going to invite up to the podium Kelly Baxley from Siemens Building Technologies, one of APPA's 2012's chief sponsors. He will also serve as the moderator of this morning's panel session, which will address the future of the workplace. Just by means of a little introduction, Kelly is a graduate of Paris Junior College in Texas, an associate degree in applied science and air conditioning technology. Additionally, he received his bachelor in business administration as a graduate of University of North Texas. 2010, he was inducted into the Academic Wall of Honor at Paris Junior College. He is employed by the 4th largest employer in the world, Siemens. At Siemens, Kelly is a senior account executive and is responsible for developing business opportunities in the Texas higher education marketplace. He was selected in 2006 and 2010 as Siemens Sales Professional of the Year. Kelly is the founder of the Texas APPA Scholarship Program, which awards educational scholarships to physical plant representatives. Kelly, it's a pleasure to turn this over to you. We look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody. I see a lot of familiar faces. It's my 15th consecutive APPA conference, and I've gotten to know a lot of you folks out there, and I can call a lot of y'all my friends. So, good morning, APPA Board of Directors, APPA members and guests, both domestic and international. And good morning to my fellow business partners. And welcome to Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City, the home of the Rockies, the home of the Denver Broncos, the U.S. Mint, and former home of the world-famous wrestling champion of Coonsmiller Junior High School, Bulldogs, 8th grade, class of 1972, Kelly Baxley. Yep, all 99 to 105 pound class, and they said it was all power. Seriously, welcome to the 2000 APPA conference, and thanks everyone for coming to such a beautiful place to conduct business. I would like to take a moment to give tribute to all of those that have been affected by the recent forest fires in the state of Colorado. What a mess. I'm sure, along with Siemens, everybody visiting would want to give goodwill to the state and certainly offer a speedy recovery to everybody. And of course, to the men and women of the military who's out in harm's way protecting our free way of life. I'd like to give the military a big round of applause. Before I tell you a little bit about Siemens, I would like to take a real quick moment and introduce a man that provides the funds for Siemens to sponsor APPA and to support this fraternity of education service providers, professionals. Steve Hoiberg, Mr. Steve Hoiberg's in the audience somewhere. I'd like Steve to just stand up real quick. He's the gentleman that, there he is, he's right over here. Thank you, Steve. Steve is the Global Building Technologies Market Manager for Higher Education. So I appreciate Steve and everything he does to support me in my TAPA endeavors, and APPA endeavors. Okay, often I get asked just how big Siemens is. We just heard that Siemens is the 4th largest employer in the world. I know you guys have heard me say that over the last few years. But I thought I'd reiterate it for some of our new friends this year. As a leading provider of energy and environmental solutions, building automation, fire safety, security, and control products, the Building Technologies of Siemens Industry, Inc. is a trusted partner to colleges and universities of all sizes. Across the country, our solutions are helping campuses become more comfortable, safer, more productive, more sustainable, and less costly to operate. Higher education is one of the largest vertical markets for Siemens Industry. We want to thank all of you existing customers for your continued support, and we look forward to doing business with new opportunities. I'm very excited about the next couple of days at APPA. This week, the Siemens team will be sharing with you solutions in the areas of energy services, green lab solutions, smart buildings, demand grid management, and sustainable efficiencies. So come by and visit us, and we have our traditional white soft couches you can take a rest on. So we look forward to seeing you. But first, mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the most prepared of all? Who knows what labor and technology has in store? So sit back and you'll learn some more. Over the course of the next 10 to 15 years, the workforce will be molded and changing demographic trends, technological advances, and economic globalization. These changes will require that employers understand and embrace an increasingly diverse workforce and aging employee base, with all different needs and expectations of the workplace. It is not unusual in higher education circles to talk about these issues affecting the campus. Experts might write about how shifting demographics are changing the campuses, or say technology is becoming pervasive on campus. What we rarely appreciate is the degree to which such statements are literally true. Higher education trends change the campus, the actual physical built environment of buildings, grounds, and infrastructure. Two major issues facing higher education that were identified by APPA in 2011 Thought Leaders Report are changes in demographics of the campus workforce and ever-evolving role of technology in higher education. The data is clear that the workforce of the future will be more diverse than of today. This diversity is seen in various nationalities that call the United States home, as well as in the aging workforce that supports our economy. At the same time, competition is on the rise for critical professions. We are facing a sharp decline in available workers with the competency to perform the duties of skilled positions. Colleges and universities need to be deliberate about recruiting employees, adapting strategies such as partnering with others in the community to create training programs and promoting diversity in the workforce. While technology is now everywhere on campus, students expect it, faculty need it, staff rely on it, and yet higher education continues to lag behind industry in gathering, sorting, and interpreting data and monopolizing on some of the changing impacts of technology. The current trends will require our campus leadership to be creative, to create innovative approaches in the way we prepare, train, communicate, engage, and incentivize our employee base in order to meet the demands of campus customers. It is now my pleasure to begin our discussion this morning as we engage in a conversation that shares steps in being taken to prepare for seismic shift in labor and the changes we will soon witness in the workforce, and what will be required for us to continue our journey toward excellence. This morning, each panelist will present a 10-minute presentation. At the conclusion of the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. Ladies and gentlemen, our first panelist. With over 30 years of various leadership roles in higher education facilities at 5 different institutions, Ted Widener enjoys tackling the varied challenges that arise in higher education facilities. Presently, he is the Vice Chancellor for Facilities Management and Planning at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, responsible for over 15 million gross square feet and over 42,000 acres across the state. He is a frequent writer on higher education facility issues, including contributing several chapters to a manual on maintenance staffing for colleges and universities, the book review editor for Facilities Management magazine for the last 11 years, and author of articles on higher education facilities, and conference speaker. He is on the board of NewCorp, a partnership between the University of Nebraska-Lincoln and Lincoln Electric System, operating the utility infrastructure for the university and constructing capital improvement projects which are financed through energy savings. He is licensed in architecture and engineering in several states. In his spare time, he consults on education facility issues internationally. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ted Widener.
When I was first asked to participate in this, it started to hit me that even though I keep espousing needing to know more about our facilities, knowing the data, that I didn't have as much data as I really wanted. In facilities, we have to keep track of fans, belts, filters, rooms, an unbelievable amount of detailed information about all the buildings and systems that keep the educational mission moving forward. And yet occasionally we forget that we have another big data set that we have to keep an eye on, our employees. Our workforce is aging and it is becoming more diverse. A survey conducted in 2006 showed the changing demographics just by age, where the dark black line is probably the cohort that you and I may be in, and it's starting to go back down. And there are some people over 75 in the workforce. Looking at my organization, we have young people, and some of the young people in the demographics are students that we take advantage of because they'd like to make a little bit of money on the side to pay for their education. But look at that number, 50 to 59, and how big that is in our workforce. Where are we going to be in 5 or 10 years? I even have an employee who's over 80. What are we going to do about getting any knowledge out of that employee? Breaking it down a little bit more, by different operating unit in my organization. Aside from my administrative assistant, there's 2 students that make up that 50% in the 18 to 29 group. And we have in our landscape services area a lot of students that make that organization run. But what's really more interesting is that only 70% of our employees use English as their native language. There are a lot that use English as a second language, including all of those languages listed. and of course American Sign Language for our blind employee. When I first came to the university about 8 years ago, we were in the midst of a survey on the workplace environment. And one of the concerns that we had was that we had 30% of our workforce wasn't familiar with some of the terms in the survey. And so we had to take some time to translate the survey into about a dozen different languages in order to get our employees to understand what we were asking them and to get meaningful information back from them. It was a fortunate partnership because there were other groups on campus that had some of those same language groups, and they needed to take advantage of the translation that we had gotten done for the survey. But that's one example of what the University of Nebraska has done in order to find out what's going on with its workforce. And this information, some of which I got pretty quickly, is an indication that all employers have not really analyzed their workforce demographics. The other challenge that we have, and if you haven't seen it, I'm sure you have coming to APPA, there's this great video on YouTube called Did You Know? And its focus is mostly on K-12 education, but it affects us too because we get the results of K-12 education either going through our institutions or we eventually get them as employees. So when we're faced with the upcoming labor force changing jobs 10 to 14 times by the time they hit age 38, or 1 or 2 times a year, that's a challenge. How do you maintain your knowledge base? 1 in 4 workers has been at their current employer for less than a year. How do you transfer information successfully? And then the fact that we have a rapidly changing technical workforce. The building automation system that Kelly and his corporation created 10 years ago is not the building automation system that they want to see us installing today, and for good reason. In addition, we have to communicate with our employees and make sure that everybody knows what's going on. Ours is despite what I will often say in many other forums, ours is a communication business, and communicating what we're doing either today, tomorrow, or the next day, planning, making sure folks know what their assignment is a real challenge. In the 60s, we were using paper. In the 70s, those of us that went to computers were working off of a mainframe. By the 80s, we were using mini computers. In the 90s, we started using personal computers. We have computer networks. Now we all have smartphones, tablet devices. What are we going to be using to communicate the work control issues, the maintenance steps required to our employees in the future? So what are our challenges? First, we need to keep our existing employees. In one of our surveys, we found that once we get an employee past the 5-year mark, we can keep them for 30 years. But our challenge is keeping them that 5 years. Recruiting employees, finding the right people for the job is a big challenge. And in 2007, an employer survey indicated that the average cost, granted some of our employees don't fall in this number, it cost $12,000 to replace an average employee. That's a big expenditure of recruitment, interviewing, and then getting them up to speed. How are we going to do that? We also have to continue to develop the talent, make sure we're engaging our employees, transfer knowledge from the old-timers, the gray beards like me, and what is it that we have to have, and what do the upcoming employees need to have to do the job the right way for the students and the faculty. And of course, how are we going to make some of the transfers from physical storage, papers in drawers that fill up walls and file cabinets, information about what's in your buildings, and move that to the cloud so that it's available on a smart device rather than having to go back to the office and look up information. And then, because the workforce is changing, getting older, what are we doing? What is the University of Nebraska doing to respond to some of these demographic changes? We have looked at and have implemented in some cases different start-stop times for some of our employees, either because they have multi-generations that they're caring for, their own child care, and then their adult care issues. We adjust schedules and breaks. And of course, we're always looking for additional time for training. One way of solving that problem is using online training. We have a multi-language video training custodial employees because they are our largest area of turnover, turning over about 15 to 18% of the workforce annually. And then, of course, we need to make sure our supervisors understand the issues of multi-generational training, multi-generational supervision. Supervising a 60, 70-year-old employee is different from supervising a 20-year-old employee. They have a different mindset, and how do we deal with them? And then how do 20-year-old employees work with their older, more knowledgeable 60, 70-year-old co-workers and understand how that older person has got a lot of knowledge and information that they may not have received in their regular training. And of course, then we have also customized work assignments. And in some cases, our work assignments are designed specifically to get knowledge from the older employees and get it recorded and transferred to the younger employees. So that's just a brief look at some of the things that we're doing in order to respond to our changing demographics. And I'll be interested in having some discussion with you and with my colleague in the discussion period. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Our next panelist is Brooks Baker, Assistant Vice President of Facilities, University of Alabama, Birmingham. Brooks has been at the University of Alabama at Birmingham for well over 33 years and has been Associate Vice President for Facilities for the last 14 of those years. UAB is a medical center university located on 85 city blocks in downtown Birmingham with 14 million square feet of space and almost 20,000 employees. Brooks has had the opportunity to participate in the rapid growth of the institution and help it develop from a commuter school to a more traditional campus university. Brooks?
Thank you, Kelly. All right. You know, they really know how to make a guy feel inadequate. You know, I was listening to the introductions. You got Kelly over here. He's the Academic Hall of Fame. What is that about? You know, I do have some academic honors. I graduated from Vanderbilt with an MBA, and I was part of that 10% academically that made the upper 90% possible. So, you know, and then you got Ted over here. 15 million square feet on 30,000 acres? Well, it's actually 640, but there's more stuff. Wow. You know, we're in little downtown Birmingham. Olin, what we got, 230 acres or something? So, you know, they really know how to make a guy feel very inadequate when he comes up here speaking among this elite group. The topic of the day, by the way, for somebody that may not have noticed, I'm not from around here. Ted reminded me, I've been using this slide for 12 or 15 years in speaking because I like to let everybody know exactly who I am. Just an old farm boy. That's my middle daughter right there with me. And you know, you talk about cultural differences. and such. Well, there, we have a few, don't we? Mirror, mirror on the wall. Now, I don't know why we're doing the mirror, mirror on the wall. When I look in the mirror, I don't think that's the face of the future. And most of my staff is saying, praise the Lord. I told the group one time a couple of years ago, well, 4 or 5 years ago, I said, when we finish, I will not retire until we finish the campus green. Project we had to have done. Olin, who is here somewhere, and his team worked around the clock to finish that. But anyway, mirror, mirror on the wall. It should be more crystal ball instead of mirror, mirror on the wall, shouldn't it? What are we going to see coming in the next few years? We have a lot of misconceptions. We talk about changes. Well, we talk about the generation changes. Jack Colby introduced us sometime back to the Generation X, Generation Y, baby boomers, and all those terms that we got familiar with, and how different they are, and we all have our theories on what that means. Yesterday, Terry Bump was speaking to the SFO group. You know what SFO stands for? That means Senior Facility Officers. So, yeah, I'm in that group. I get the discount. And she was making a comment. She said, how many of you have a wristwatch? How many of you have a wristwatch? Do you know that less people have a wristwatch because all the Gen Xers and Gen Yers have the handheld computers, and so they didn't wear wristwatches, so now it's not in style to wear wristwatches. I got news for it. It's not a generational problem with them having the technology. They just don't want to get to work on time, so they don't have to have a watch. So I think we have some differences of opinions on what these things mean, these generational differences, and et cetera. And some of you Gen Xers, sorry if I offend any of you or whatever, but I was having a discussion. The first experience I hired a young man, or I say we hired a young man who came in, and he was one of the Gen Xers, and he literally did not get to work at exactly 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock when I thought he should. Didn't always work, through lunch like I thought he should. Didn't always stay late like I thought he should. And so I was talking to him one day, and I said, and he was saying, well, I do my work at home. I have my computer with me. I don't have to be here. And so I use that phrase that you see there. I said, who is the next boss that's going to promote you? It's going to be a baby boomer. So, that was one of my first tastes of experiencing the change in generations. That was several years ago, as you might imagine. But he learned a little bit at that one, and I did too. Last week I was in San Jose. I like to show family pictures too. I got a couple of granddaughters in San Jose right now. They live in Fort Collins. Typically they're in San Jose for the summer. And the son and daughter who are Gen Ys. And I have 3 kids. And while I was in San Jose, my son-in-law is a high-tech engineer, and he was in San Jose, and his apartment complex that his company had him living in for the summer while he was there working on a problem was adjacent to Hewlett-Packard World. That's a big place, Hewlett-Packard's office. Apple is right next door, and Google's around the corner somewhere. I didn't see all those. And this apartment complex is where a lot of those employees live. And as I was watching the coming and going, they didn't look like me. They didn't look like me. And I was thinking, this is what we're talking about. This is what this speech is about. There were people of different nationalities. They were all under 40. I mean, you were a senior citizen in that apartment complex if you were 40 or over. And in looking at that, it gave me some pause and some cause to think on where we're headed. What's going to happen in the workforce? What does that mean to us in our planning, design, construction, our plant operations? What are we going to be seeing coming in the future? Now, Ted gave you plenty of statistics. I don't do statistics very well. It's one of the reasons I supported that upper 90% in the graduate school. But we have the veterans, which is pretty much retired now, not entirely, but baby boomers, which is, of course, that group from 46 to 64. Gen X, 65 to 80, and Gen Y is 81 to 2000. Each of these groups, we like to label them with characteristics of what they're like. But I'll tell you, that's not a very good way to do it in many ways, because there are some generalities, but there are some specifics, too, that go with each individual. That son-in-law of mine, he fits in the category pretty well. He works 60 hours a week, probably. But guess what? Only 35 of them are at the office. The rest of them are at home or at Starbucks. You know, he does more work at Starbucks than I do at the office sometimes. It's just a different philosophy on his part on how he does work. My daughter's the same way. So having to learn a little bit of the difference of how things work with these different generations. I also have a son. You've seen the two daughters. I have a son, and he doesn't fit the mold very well either. But excuse me, I needed to go back for just a second before my slides get ahead of me. You know, the baby boomers, we want our kids to be better off than we were, and the veterans. That was sort of the philosophy. The Gen Y is the first generation to be worse off than their predecessors. I've heard that said. I'm not buying that. You know, they can do what they want to do. And it's a play, you know, they can be better than we were. And they can be more prosperous. But they got to want to. We all do. That's a rule for all of us, isn't it, Bob? You got to want to do it. The Gen X, sometimes people call it the lost generation. And you say, why is that? It's because all of us overbearing type A baby boomers held them back. Well, everybody needs somebody to blame. But, and I found out as a father and a boss, it was usually me. But, you know, what is the world coming to? And what are we going to be when we grow up? That's my son. And he's also a Gen Y'er. You might notice he looks a little different than some Gen Y'ers you might see in the high-tech industry. But, you know, I like to show off my kids, good kids. But they're Gen Ys. They all three are different. Now, let me tell you what the real cultural difference is in this world. You think it's Gen X, Gen Y, baby boomers. How many of you have 3 children? So all of you got a middle child, right? Now that's where the difference is. You know, I think the birth order, I like the birth order studies. You know, I think there's more differences in birth order than there is in generation times. Those of you that have 3 kids and 2 kids, you know, you got an older one and a younger one. Wow, they're so different, aren't they? Every one of them end up being different. And it's the same way with Gen X, Gen Y. You learn to deal with it, and you learn to make it work. You have to adapt and change. And that's what we're going to do, and that's what we've been doing in the physical plant arena. You know, we're building buildings that are a whole lot different than they were when I first got into this business. High-tech, high-performance buildings. And those buildings require a different level of attention than what the old academic buildings were that we built in the past, and hospital buildings and all those things that we built. They require a different level of skill and a different level of knowledge. Way beyond, you know, I mean, yeah, I was pretty good at pneumatic controls. How many of you got any pneumatic controls left? We've got a few. That's sort of like, I would have been a good COBOL programmer, you know. But that's not worth a whole lot now. Not worth a whole lot now. So we have to look at what are we going to do to prepare for the future. And is it something we can do? Is it going to work? The Gen X and Gen Y generations don't really embrace crafts and trade positions as being a lofty goal. You know, when I was growing up, half my class went into the trades, went to trade school. We had trade schools, and about half went into college and elsewhere. those guys and young ladies that went into the crafts and such were very proud of what they were doing, tickled to death. And they had great jobs, made good livings. It's not quite as popular today with a lot of our Gen X and Gen Ys. You know, like my parents told me, you know, they expected me to go to college because that's what I was supposed to do. We impress that on our children too. So we've got a problem. We've got a gap here with pride, you might say, and the desire to be a tradesperson or a craft person. That hits us hard in the construction and maintenance crafts. You know, the Transcontinental Railroad. Who built the Transcontinental Railroad? Chinese-born laborers did most of the work on the Transcontinental Railroad. They built it for us. We think this is new, what we're talking about today. It is not. It's not a new problem. If you were in New York in the 1920s, what would your workforce have looked like if it were diverse? Italian, Scotch, Irish, English, Catholic, Jewish, you know. I doubt there'd have been many of us Southern Baptists in the group, but it would have been a diverse workforce, wouldn't it? And do they get along better than the workforce today? No. Worse, probably, in many ways. We had to grow through that, didn't we? We had to grow through it. But it didn't come easy. So what do you have to do to address some of these issues? What are some things that we have to be thinking about to address the issues of the workforce today? Well, good question. And probably the discussion will get more answers than I'm going to give you, but a couple of things that I think are important are having better training opportunities at trade schools as well as internal training in our organization. One of the areas that I see lacking is we just don't turn enough qualified people out of our trade schools to take care of these high-tech things that that Kelly and his group are producing for us. How do you maintain these things if you don't have the current technology? We've got to provide that. If you don't, you'll become a dinosaur as a department, as a university. You'll have to outsource all of your technical work, which may not be a bad thing for some of you, may not be a good thing for some of you, but it's nice to have that option one way or the other. We like to have a lot of in-house skill. We also use a lot of outsourcing skills for those areas where we don't have the technical expertise. But somebody's got to train these people, and somebody's got to get them skilled in what they do. The other thing that I've noticed is kids, I say kids, that's anybody under 40, but when you get my age, everybody's a kid now. They learn in different ways than I did. I went to the library when I was in college. I got as far away from everybody else as I could, stuck my nose in the book and studied till I fell asleep. Typically 3 to 5 minutes. Today, we just renovated our library at UAB, our undergraduate library. We put a Starbucks in it. We put cushioned seating like this all around. We put it where it's on wheels. The kids can, in our new classroom buildings, the lounging areas are on wheels. All the chairs are, so the kids can all get in a circle, and they can get up close where they can communicate by text messaging to each other. I don't understand all that, but they work differently than we do. There's a different atmosphere in the workplace with the younger, I say younger, with some of the generational groups in the X's, mainly in the Y's, and in those that are coming after the Y's now. So, what does that mean in your workplace? Do you have to start thinking about something different? Do you become more of a team-oriented workplace? Or do you just say, all right, Joe, you're responsible for that over there. I don't want to see you until quitting time. And by the way, don't talk to anybody. That's kind of the way we used to work it, isn't it? Not the way it works today. And not the way it's going to work in the future at all. Anyway, who has the answers to all this? If you're in the audience, we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, sir. Very well done. What we'd like to do now is we're going to just sort of talk amongst us up here, ask a few questions, and then we're going to open it up for questions and answers to the floor. So please, that's where we want the bulk of this discussion this morning is by you. And these two gentlemen, of course, will look at it from a facility standpoint, and if I can contribute from a vendor that's got 32 years of higher education behind my belt, I'll be happy to do that as well. I'll start off with more of a vendor question. A lot of the campuses that I serve struggle between doing a lot of training through technical suppliers like Siemens, because they're afraid that if they educate their staff too much, then they will seek opportunity outside the state facilities. What's your take on that as an administrator?
I agree that that is a risk, but if you don't demonstrate your confidence in your employees and make sure that they are trained, educated to do the best job they can do for you, then you're going to be cheating yourself in the long run. There will be some who think the grass is greener someplace else, the paycheck is better, and we've got plenty of those like that, where we've lost some pretty good employees to ethanol plants, let's say, where the demand was high for boiler operators, but we still have a boiler operator program to get them educated because the trade schools aren't doing it for us.
Our philosophy is to train and to try to create the best employees we can. Then if we can falsify a police record, they won't get hired away. But no, we do have that problem, and that is that frankly, some of our vendors like to hire our people away, the good ones, and that's, you know, we have had historically excellent training programs, and we have had the experience of losing some employees to other institutions or other companies, but overall, you're better off to lose a few and to train well. Frankly, the ones who are coming up behind them can watch that route of progression, even if it's leaving your university, and they can see that as still an opportunity to improve themselves, and they'll hopefully get better as a result of it.
Yeah. Good, because our philosophy is the more that our end users can do with the system, they quite honestly make some of our best customers, because they're actually using the product and their staff is trained on it. With this demographic change in the workforce, can you share how your institution has dealt with the increased number of members of the workforce who have ADA requirements / needs who are joining the career of facilities? How are you guys addressing that?
Well, first of all, it's the law. So, you know, it's one of those things that we don't have a choice in, and that's a good thing. But when we have employees who we have some currently that we've had to rearrange their work locations, we've had to give them additional tools or technology to be able to allow them to work away from their office or away from their current, you know, workplace. I'm thinking of one or two individuals we have that we've had to create different office locations for, so that they can access all the tools they need. So I think basically it is, we just have to provide the tools as best we can so that we can enable them to do their jobs.
The law does not require that we hire someone who can't do the basic job. So our first tact is to make sure we describe the job clearly and completely, so that anyone entering our recruiting pool understands our expectations. But when we have employees who, usually as they get older, develop some limitations, we find ways of addressing them in order to keep them in the labor pool because of their knowledge base. They're valuable to us, and it's value. We want to value them, but we still end up sometimes with employees who are unable to do the job, because we can't keep them on board if they're not able to produce for the organization. It's a challenging balancing act, and we work very closely with the experts on campus.
Good, good. I deal with a lot of the guys that are in the trenches on universities, and we get in the discussion of leads and the movement of green in today's society. And one of the universities that I take care of has made a concentrated effort to share with the frontline technical staff about what sustainability really is, and what leads really means, and what the overall plan is. Other universities that don't share that knowledge with the frontline people sort of seem to miss the boat a little bit on the whole concept of green. Are you guys implementing any of that type of education down with your frontline people, or do you feel that if they know more about it, it can help the university achieve its goals better?
Leadership in energy and environmental design is all about what we've been doing at the University of Nebraska, and what I believe APPA has been doing for decades. Sustaining the organization, sustaining the environment, sustaining the facilities. Our frontline custodial employees all use green cleaning chemicals, and they understand why. And our energy technicians who maintain the HVAC systems and building automation system all understand why it's important to keep the equipment in tune. Our challenge really is in explaining to folks outside the facilities organization why we do things a particular way to save energy, to have a more sustainable campus.
And I think we lead by example, and it's one of those where we could, we don't talk a lot about it, I suppose, to our first line employees, but we have a lot of programs that they're involved in, and so they get to see the sustainability excitement that we have at work. So it creates excitement. We have, when you go to our webpage, right up there in front of you is sustainability is one of our #1 goals. We brag on how much water we save every year by some of the innovative practices we've developed on water conservation, even in Alabama where we got lots of water, but we want to conserve that water. We advertise what our BTUs per square foot are in various buildings and how those relate back to the operations of it. Our chilled water plants, how many kilowatt hours does it take to make a ton of chilled water? We keep all those records, and every employee sees this as part of those things that we see as value and valuable for the institution.
Good, good. Well, my last question before we open it up to the floor, where people ask me when I'm going to retire, and I'm like, I'm 51 years old, I got a lot to go. Brooks, you mentioned retirement. If you had to give one key bit of advice to the person that's going to replace you, what would that be in today's environment? I know what I'd tell my guy.
You think I'm closer? Everybody making that assumption. Just one piece of advice, and that's a tough one. I think the first thing is that in order to be an effective leader, and this doesn't have a whole lot to do with what we're talking about, but maybe it does. First thing you've got to do is love people. You got to care for the people that are working for you. They will know. They will know whether it's all about you or whether you care for them in the workplace. So that's always my first piece of advice for a leader. You got to show people you care.
Yeah. I agree. Ed, any comments?
Embrace change. Identify young people or others who are excited about what you have to do to serve the campus, to serve the university, and it doesn't matter if they think the way you think about how to tackle the problem. If they're successful at what they do, they're probably going to help the organization overall.
Good, good. What I've always thought I would tell my younger guy is, you got an agenda, forget about it. Your agenda is the universities that you serve. So that's how we try and approach our business. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for sitting in on our little discussion there. We would like to open the floor for any questions. We have some microphones based right here in the center. And I'm not sure if there's a traveling microphone, but please feel free to come up and ask any question that you feel like to ask. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Mr. Brooks, this might be directed to you specifically. Do you have a business model, or do you have a suggestion on how to obtain and get information from the senior people, from people who have been working in institutions for 20, 30, 40 years, and how you might be able to gather that and use that as a training model, as a recruitment model, as something that you could to help inform new employees?
Go ahead. Excellent question. And how do we prepare for someone leaving, whether it's from attrition or whether it's retirement, or perhaps they get hired and go somewhere else, if we can make them make their skills desirable. Teamwork. I believe having people working in teams, having people working in small groups, and never having it where we just send someone off to a particular area. That's his building forever. He's the only one that knows that building. That's where you get in trouble with it. You need to have teams and work in a 2 or 3 people at least in a team maintaining your facilities. And each portion of it. Don't let anybody have all knowledge about a particular system. I have been there, done that, and it puts you in a bad position.
And do you think it's important to document that process too, in terms of either creating a manual or a guide to that particular position?
Yeah, I agree. We do something similar for those employees where we can codify, where we can write down what they know and put it in a manual or put it online. That's what we do. But we've also converted maintenance operations on our campus to be zone-based. So we have teams that circulate through several buildings, and they're responsible, and we get a lot of our knowledge transfer through that team because they're all working together to solve problems in a particular building.
Great. Thank you.
Anybody else? Oh, right over here. Okay. If you'll talk a little closer into the microphone, we might can hear you a little better up here. There's
It's a little
blurry. What experience we have with multi-trade work groups in a union environment? Yeah.
We're a non-union environment, and so we don't have that difficulty that you would have. But I did come out of a history of working in the mines. I worked, my early career was in the coal mines, and very, very strong union environment there. It's very difficult to get that across, but you just have to try to sell it to those in leadership positions and others that is the key to survival. That you won't, that none of us will be here if we can't get these changes made. It has been successful in some union environments.
In my current position, I'm in a non-union setting, right to work state, but I've got about 15 years experience working in highly unionized states also. My first advice or recommendation is to work with not the union leadership on campus, but with the business agents, and make sure they understand that your work environment is a little bit different from straight construction work environment, and get them to understand that the world is different. The world is team-based, and we're moving that direction more and more, and see what you can do about getting their cooperation. There are undoubtedly ways within your university or your system to where you could take a relatively low-level skilled job and make it a multi-craft sort of activity. You don't want to push the unions that far, but if you have to, you might encourage them to work more cooperatively with you by doing that. I tried that once, and it was successful. I got electricians and pipe fitters to work together.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
My name is Philip Nell. I'm from the University of Pretoria in South Africa. I was listening with great interest to some of the positions that you take about your staff, and I thought, just to stimulate the discussion, let's put a different model on the table. The institution that I work for have about 11 million square feet of facilities on 6 campuses. And 15 years ago, after a comprehensive study, we decided to totally outsource services. Now it's 15 years later, and the question is, are we thinking of changing back to where we were? Our answer is distinctively no. Because we think that taking that type of approach forces a lot of discipline onto the organization. Having outsourced, in theory, means that every 3 years you may have to change your service provider. For that reason, you better make sure that your documentation, your records and everything is absolutely up to date. Otherwise, you'll have a serious disaster when you hand over the site to another contractor. It also simplifies the management models significantly, because you can now have multifunction services on various campuses without complicating your structures in-house, and I don't want to go into those details. The other point that I want to support, though, is that in our experience it's very clear that those staff that you do have, it costs you far less and is more effective to retrain them than to try and replace them. And for that reason, the training is a very important thing. And maybe just a last comment, because some other people that I've been talking to have found that interesting. In our country, the government takes 1% of the total payroll of every organization and puts that in the skills development fund. And then if organizations train with organizations that have accredited programs, you can then claim that money back. You can claim back more than what you put in, because not everybody trains. But there is a guaranteed fund of 1% of the total payroll of the country in which you can put your hand in to train. I thought maybe just that stimulates. Thank you.
I'm not sure.
Well, let me comment on a couple things. I mean, first of all, by Philip's comments on continuing to outsource pushes his requirement for knowledge up and requires that he have the same information that his outsourced contractor has, so that he can maintain institutional knowledge. I had some experience a number of years ago going through the change from one elevator service provider to another, and we had not prepared well. And clawing back the drawings about every machine on campus was a real challenge, in making sure that we transferred things to the new contractor was a big deal. And so those of you who have outsourced services, if you don't have the detailed information that it takes to either bring the work back in or to transfer it to another contractor, I would encourage you to get that information, get it into your system so that you know what the heck is going on. The other comment he had about the 1% tax on that goes into training, I think 1% is low. I try to aim for 2%. Budget 2%, for my employees overall to attend conferences like APPA, to get training from other organizations. Things are changing all the time, and if you don't make a modest but significant investment in all of your employees, it doesn't have to be every single one, but in your general employee base to the tune of about 2%, I think you're cheating yourself.
No comments on that one, I think Ted said it all.
Sorry, I just want to put something in perspective. I'm not saying that's the only money we put into training. Every organization puts their own budget in training. But over and above, there is another fund that you could put your hand in.
Okay. That's over and above. So then it starts to get real nice. Yeah.
You know, it's nice to have the opportunity to have good vendors and good outsourcing options. But it needs to always be a business decision that's based hopefully on good business, not because you have customers internally who say, I really don't like your organization, so I think I will outsource it. That's what you don't want to see happen. But if there is a good business decision that can be made, I know Olin here in the house, it works with me. You know, we've been looking very carefully at outsourcing some of our facilities functions and pricing and quality and et cetera. And every one of them is a business-based decision. It's not based on emotions, not based on problems. It's based on what's the best business decision for us. Typically economics, but also on performance.
And rightfully so. Yeah. That's the criteria it should be on. Yes, please.
My question is on the gap that you talked about, the workforce. You know, you have the big gap between the people who are going to retire 5 to 10 years from now and the people who are not enticed to get into the industry, you know, the young people. So the question is, what is being done to address that gap? What kind of programs are you going to the colleges and enticing these young people to actually find this profession more rewarding?
That's how they're recruiting? Is that?
You know, whatever is going on right now, I mean, it's been a big discussion that, you know, years from now, you're going to have this gap. You know, everything is changing, but that needs to be addressed in some way, some form. And how are we enticing these young people to come into the facilities profession?
Okay. Well, thank you. Recruiting, how's the institution going out and seeking this new labor? How do you entice them to come on board?
Well, it's, you know, we have tried everything, and you know, from posting notices in local communities to going to trade schools and trying to recruit people out of trade schools and colleges and universities. And so we could not find a one-size-fits-all on recruitment. Sometimes we find that we are better to just advertise and try to find a high-tech employee and pay them whatever it takes. But then again, sometimes we find it's better to bring them in at the ground level, train them all the way up through the organization until they reach their peak. And we have some employees who started with no trade school, no training, right out of high school basically, but have progressed to frankly some of the best high-tech people we have through internal training. And so there's no silver bullet there for us. I mean, it's hard, and it changes in our market, and every marketplace is different. Ted's marketplace is different than mine in Birmingham, Alabama. You know, it was very fortuitous for us when U.S. Steel went out of business. Wasn't too good for them and all those employees, but all of a sudden we had a great influx. So for years we didn't have to recruit. So it changes depending on the economic viability of the community as well.
We have to be part of the solution. First of all, we have internal training programs to maintain continuity of operations. We identify training programs either in-house or through other service providers that help us advance. And in some cases, we have taken rather skilled employees that we have and introduced them into the community college program to educate potential employees for us. And so we have a supervisor of one of our utility plants, and he teaches a course at the local community college, and we draw the best students from there to start filling in our low-level boiler operator positions, and then we have training programs for our low-level employees who don't know much about boiler operations to advance through the organization and get higher levels of qualification with some pay incentives in addition. So, because they have to invest their time off the clock for us, and so we reward them subsequently.
Well, and the business service providers out here, and I'm sure Siemens isn't just out on an island by themselves, but the talent pool that we have to select from is we're doing the same thing. Is we've got some of our senior technicians and project managers that goes out to visit with the trade schools and goes and talks to engineering departments at different universities just to get that recruitment of young blood in, and you know, you can get the people on board, but there's also that ramping up period to where they can stand on their own feet. So.
Yeah. By the way, just since we're being recorded, U.S. Steel did not go out of business. They went out of business locally in Birmingham. So.
Yeah, okay.
But they might take offense at that.
We don't want a lawyer walking in the door here.
Yeah, I've got to keep my lawyers busy here. We're starting up a new steam plant soon. We're having to a large underground distribution system throughout downtown Birmingham that we're having to add. And Olin, you're in the room here somewhere, I presume. You want to tell them how you're recruiting for that? It might be of interest. So come over here to the mic, Olin. I'm putting him on the spot.
Yeah, put him on the spot, Bob.
Olin is our assistant vice president for plant operations, for operations and maintenance. And so this is a very large steam system that we are just getting ready to crank up. And we went over and visited with Juan at the University of Texas to see how he's doing it. So you got any hints on that, Olin?
Well, we're advertising everywhere we think there's boiler operators and people with steam experience. In some of those places we're advertising with APPA, with ASHI, IDEA, which is the International District Energy Association, and we're also working with the Navy Placement Center, because a lot of people coming out of the Navy have boiler experience, and we're advertising locally, of course, too.
Okay, good.
But we're having we're having a lot of hits on our advertisement right now.
Good luck. Is that you, Marion? Hey, yeah, Marion.
Hey,
how you doing?
It's good to see you in the suit, man. It's really. To the panel, how are you bridging the gap between the Gen X and Gen Y and the older employees, when the Gen X and Gen Y wants to spend more time in the coffee shop, on their computer, spend less time in the office, less time at work, and the older generation are still putting in the 50, 60-hour. So how are you bridging the gap of understanding and cooperation even?
I just remind them who's going to promote them next. No, it's a difficult challenge for those of us in my generation to get used to. You know, my daddy taught me very strongly when I was growing up, if you take a vacation day, you'll go to hell. I mean, it's just cut and dried, you know, and so it's pretty difficult to lose that culture. And some of you grew up with that culture too. You had daddies like that too, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
And it's having children that are Gen Ys has helped. I have become much more understanding and gotten much better at it. Although it's the Gen X and Gen Y are just like they're all people, just like the baby boomers. There are those who will take advantage of the system, and there are those who will blossom and prosper in it, and who will advance. The key is picking out which one's which, because no matter whether it's baby boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, there's some percentage of them that will excel, and you just got to pick out those, and the rest of them go their own way.
The challenge is making sure you get the employee with the right attitude and the right job. For an hourly position, we'll work with them to get them in a work schedule that works for them, but it's still 40 hours a week, and that's the expectation, and deliver it when the university needs that service delivered. For a salaried position, it's usually exempt, which means that they don't have to punch the clock and they just have to get the work done. And from my perspective, I don't believe I have a single employee who says that I don't give them enough to do. So I bury them in work until they say, stop, I can't take any more, and then I find somebody else to bury in work.
How many years did you work for Siemens?
For the exempt employees that work for me, I tell them right off the bat, I only expect them to work a half a day. And I don't really care which 12 hours they choose.
I totally understand. I tell our young guys that if you can get where you need to be at your year end, working 2 hours a day, good luck. But if it takes you 80 hours a week, then guess what? Welcome aboard. So it's usually slightly less than 80, though. But, okay, yes.
Hi, I work in the Office of Sustainability at American University in Washington, D.C., where we're training America's next politicians and people like that. We don't have an engineering or architecture program, but when we do things like build green roofs and do waste audits and have a community garden, people seem to come out of the woodwork, even non-technical students. So are you seeing kind of the green and sustainability aspect pulling in kind of new people that wouldn't have necessarily been interested in facilities management?
Did y'all get that?
Yeah. I missed a lot of it. Go ahead.
We certainly get added interest in what the facilities organization does on campus by non-technical students when we do sustainability related projects and a lot of other projects for that matter. I think where I'm having the greatest success in drawing from the student population on the non-technical side is really the communication majors. Getting my organization on Facebook and getting messages out to students in a meaningful way, that's always been a challenge for the techies that predominantly exist in facilities operation. And that's where we tap into other strengths, again focusing on not just diversity of the organization, male, female, or ethnic background, but diversity in educational background also. We don't survive if we don't have the right diverse mix.
The leaders in our sustainability program, even though our facilities organization is the hub of the sustainability movement on our campus, a lot of our help comes from our biology majors, and those that are very interested in the environment, those that are technically, the biology equips them for that. But then we also have the folks in marketing that help us with the marketing of that on campus. So it is a widespread, multi-disciplined approach.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
Many of us in the room work for public universities, if not most of us, and we're seeing a lot of attacks relatively recently on public service employees. The reputation of those employees is sort of being threatened of whether this is a noble profession to be in. And I'm wondering how that would relate to being attractive to the up-and-coming next generation. For the mid-career employee, our attraction used to be good pension plans, health care plans, those sort of things, which are again under attack. So I'm just wondering about the panelists' thoughts about these trends that we see, rather recent trends in the public sector.
Banking has been under attack. Energy has been under attack. Attorneys are under attack. Maybe it's just higher education's time in the barrel to be under attack. We are a noble profession as long as we can get our employees to deliver value to whomever the customer is. And we have a very wide customer base of taxpayers, parents, students, future students. We're doing okay. Nothing in life is ever supposed to be easy. And we just have to find out what it is that we can do to demonstrate we're delivering value.
And we are seeing a reduction in our ability to recruit and retain people at the craft level and also at the executive levels, because when I went to work at the university, I came out of industry, and it was typically, we can't pay you what you are making now, but look at the benefits. And look at the retirement, look at the insurance, look at all of these things that go with it. So that was a selling point, and has been for years. And those benefits are now under attack because of the public employee. As you said, it's our turn in the barrel, I suppose, but it's, we see the public employees being attacked for the good retirement. But they don't talk about the fact that you got paid less for 30 years so you could have that retirement. That's an immaterial point. But I know in our state it has been. They've taken away retirement benefits because everybody else in the state didn't get the same benefit. But it does make it more difficult to recruit and retain, because that was one of our big selling points in the past.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? I know, Glenn, you were going to make a few closing remarks. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for this morning's session. Ted?
Their tolerance level was good.
Kelly, Ted, Brooks, yes, we thank you. This has been a very insightful discussion and a great kickoff to our conference here. We thank you. And I also want to thank Owen over there for the Navy plug. And not just Navy, but I think I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that our military is a tremendous source of technical training. We've got a lot of military veterans coming out of the service now with tremendous skills, so don't forget that as a possible source of recruiting. I've got a little secret to staying young, to feeling young. It's a pretty simple thing. You just hang out with older people. And so, Brooks, I want to thank you for being
I knew it'd get personal.
In truth, I think the secret to staying young is keeping your sense of humor. So I think we all contributed a little bit of that this morning, too. So thank you all. And Kelly, on behalf of APPA, our board of directors, our officers, and the entire community here, we thank you. We thank Siemens for your, how many of these in a row have you?
This is my 15th consecutive APPA, but I think it's my 9th to be honored to be part of the opening ceremony, so thank you.
The truth is that we cannot put on this kind of professional forum without that kind of support. So we truly thank you, APPA.
Thank y'all for letting us do it. It's a great organization. Thank you.
So what's next? What's next? It's a good question. I got it right here. I'm checking my schedule. I'll tell you what's next. The Hall of Resources and lunch is next, starting at 10:30. David Gray, our president, is going to be over there to cut the ribbon. So I encourage you to come over. Want to remind you, at 11 o'clock, you can go by the registration booth and pick up your free book from Philip Van Hooser. Encourage you to do that. Make sure when you go into the exhibit hall, the Hall of Resources today, make your way around. Even if you're talking with some of our business partners that don't necessarily deal in a product or service that you can immediately use, just tell them how thankful you are, that they're here, that they're supporting this conference, making it all happen. And believe me, as I said before, sooner or later, you're going to need some of that support. So develop a relationship or two along the way. If you continue looking at the schedule, you'll see a full afternoon of breakout sessions. So we really encourage you, because they are there to complement and to go into more depth on the issues that we talked about this morning. So really encourage you to take those in. And then, of course, tonight we have our awards reception. Isn't this great, the way everything is just all right together here? We're all on the same floor, the breakout sessions, the plenary. We're going to have our reception right next door again. So I think we got a great venue here. Really encourage you to turn out tonight for the awards reception and pay recognition to those people that have really stepped forward in a volunteer capacity to serve this organization. And finally, don't forget, pick up your complimentary copy of the video that we showed at the very beginning as you exit. Have a great day. Enjoy the conference. We're going to see you right back in here tomorrow morning. Have a great time. Thanks.